A medal has been created in Elizabeth's name too, the Elizabeth Cross, for the next of kin of British servicemen and women killed on military operations or by terrorism. 2 recent tours of Afghanistan have seen the Welsh Guards lose 9 men. Lieutenant Mark Everson was one of them. You have been awarded the Elizabeth Cross.
Yeah.
In memory of your son.
Yes.
Just explain what the Elizabeth Cross is and how important it is to you.
Most awards that are given to soldiers, but this is something for the families, which is actually saying, you know, the families are involved in this as well. However prepared one is for soldier death, it leaves a huge hole in families everywhere, Afghanistan and the Falklands and everywhere, and it's really important to acknowledge that. And so this memory, this little cross signifies that, really.
Elizabeth is the daughter, mother and wife of military men. By her side today, as he has been for every step of her reign, is Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. They got to know one another in 1939, as Elizabeth accompanied her parents on an official visit to the Royal Naval College, Dartmouth. The cadet assigned to show her around was Philip, a prince by birth of Greece and Denmark, also a great-great-grandchild of Victoria's.
The Queen saw him, this handsome young Viking, with his sense of humor. I think right at the start, his lack of reverence, his sense of informality appealed to her, as well as his stunning good looks.
They became pen pals, with Elizabeth keeping a photo of a bearded Philip as he fought for his adopted country, Britain. It was a love match.
And in 1946, after a holiday at Balmoral, they got engaged, and though secretly, because the King and Queen asked them to postpone the public announcement until the following year.
The royal family and Princess Elizabeth's fiancé have permitted these special film studies to be made in response to the rapidly mounting worldwide interest in the forthcoming royal wedding on the 20th of November in Westminster Abbey.
I am Alexandra Mary.
Take thee, Philip.
Take thee, Philip.
To my wedded husband.
To my wedded husband.
To have and to hold.
They wed when Elizabeth was 21. After 67 years, the marriage of the Queen and Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, is longer than that of any other British sovereign. It's a cornerstone of Elizabeth's reign.
As she's said in several tributes to him, he is the rock on which her work as a monarch has been based.
He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years. And I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
Queen Victoria had her rock too. For Victoria and now Elizabeth, a vital thread through their lives has been the love and support of their husbands. Both married European princes, both met their husbands-to-be when they were very young and then got to know them slowly through letters.
He also looked like a film star. I mean, there's something very romantic in the fact that both Prince Albert and Prince Philip were both sort of gorgeous to look at. You know, that builds up the whole fairy tale.
Victoria was 16 when she met Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. He was her first cousin from Germany.
It was determined, more or less, from childhood onwards, that Victoria would marry one of those Coburg children. There were some other candidates for her to marry, but that was the obvious one. And it was her great luck that she fell in love with him, besottedly. It was a real love affair and love match from the beginning.
They kept in touch by letters, and she described him as so sensible, so kind, and so good, and so amiable too.
She really hadn't had a chance to have anyone to love. She and her mother had been at loggerheads. She had no sister, no friend, no father. So she'd been a very lonely child, and all this passion had really pent up inside her.
Obviously, Victoria's wedding to Albert on a grisly February day is essentially a private service. Victoria herself said that she noted every detail. Indeed, she does appear to have noted every detail in her journal afterwards. I think for Victoria, it was a wonderful day in every way.
The couple were married in 1840. Victoria was already queen, so she had to propose to him. They went on to have 9 children. Albert brought an experience of the world Victoria had never known. He developed a strong interest in arts and culture and built the Italian Gardens in Kensington as a testimony of his love for her.
She rejoiced in her marriage to Albert, and it had for her a significance only rivaled by her coronation day.
Victoria's coronation came after the death of her uncle, William IV.
It's one of the quirks of the hereditary system that one is expected both to mourn and rejoice at the same time, mourn the death of one sovereign, rejoice in the accession of the next. I think in 1837 there is a definite imbalance. There is notably more rejoicing than mourning. She loves being queen at the age of 18. She tells the wife of a courtier that she woke up one morning afraid it might all turn out to be a dream. She thoroughly enjoys the dream.
400,000 people flocked to London for her coronation, helped by the transport revolution, the railways, and the hopes of a nation resting on youthful shoulders, something shared by only 2 women in more than 100 years. Elizabeth's path to accession came in 1952. In January, she and Philip were waved off at the airport by her father, King George VI, as they began a Commonwealth tour in his name. It was the last time they would see one another. He was only 56.
On February the 6th, 4,000 miles away from London, Princess Elizabeth was brought the news the world was soon to hear.
It was announced from Sandringham at 10:45 today that the King, who retired to rest last night in his usual health, passed peacefully away in his sleep earlier this morning.
People were shocked by the death of the King. It wasn't anticipated, except an inner circle who knew just how ill he was.
Elizabeth returned to London in mourning, a young woman who now held the future of the monarchy in her hands.
For 4 days, King George VI lay in state in Westminster.
I remember walking past the catafalque of King George VI. My mother took me and my brother Rory, and I was only 3. And we queued for hours. You can't imagine that now, can you? Queuing for hours outside Westminster Hall, but she said, you will remember. You will remember this all your life, and this is something we owe him.
The nation mourned for the man who had saved the British monarchy. He passed on the essential value of duty to his daughter, something his great-grandmother, Victoria, understood well herself.
In 1838, Queen Victoria, at the age of 19, came here to Westminster Abbey for her coronation. Just over a century later, her great-great-granddaughter Elizabeth followed in her footsteps and was crowned right here in the very same place. More than 8,000 people packed the Abbey that day, and millions were watching on the television around the world. Elizabeth was 27 years old and the mother of 2 young children.
How was Elizabeth received at the coronation?
We all became romantics on a huge collective scale. And of course, the setting in this abbey, where the very stones talk, with the old statesman in marble looking down on it, Disraeli, Gladstone, Peel. We were right in the middle of this wonderful combination which the Brits pride themselves on, did of juxtaposing tradition and modernity and making the two work together. But above all, the young woman sitting just over there. Seared across the Velcro of memory, and it's a very dazzling searing because post-war London was very drab. We'd lost a third of our wealth in the war. There was still rationing. Very few people had any new clothes. And yet suddenly, in amidst this heroic drabness, there was the starburst of the coronation of the new, beautiful young queen.
I remember it. I was on Victoria Embankment, and it was a kind of magic moment when the great golden coach went by, and then this smiling figure. It was one of the moments of the reawakening of the country after a long and tense and deprived period.
And for those who weren't there, thanks to the revolution of television, the nation could watch from their living rooms.
27 million people in Britain in June 1953 watch at least half a day's television coverage. The number of BBC licence holders doubles that day. So there is this sense of what newspapers refer to as coronation fever.
We've only known in recent years that it was, in fact, the Queen who said, yes, it ought to be televised. An acknowledgement that the monarchy, as it were, belongs to the people. You've got to, with the new means of communication. And then this smiling figure, just all the diamonds refracting, and with the Duke of Edinburgh. But I mean, I remember it so absolutely vividly.
5 months after her coronation, Elizabeth returned to the Commonwealth tour she'd begun before her father's death. Now she was Queen and also head of the Commonwealth of Nations, which, from small beginnings, has expanded during her reign to take in 53 countries. She has visited almost all of them.
I think historians will look back on the reign and achievements of Elizabeth II and pick out the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is a real family, so successful that countries that are not former British colonies have asked to join and been allowed to join.
For Victoria, she was Empress of India, with the reach of a global superpower, the British Empire. Not that she saw much of it.
Britain did rule half the world, and it stretched everywhere from Canada to Australia and included great tracts of Asia and Africa. And it's true that Queen Victoria didn't visit any of these places. She was very much in touch and thinking about them a lot. She became besotted with India and Indian culture in her later years. She taught herself Hindustani, and she could speak a little bit of Urdu. She would have loved to go to India, but they didn't let her. So in her mind and her spirit, she traveled, completely unlike Queen Elizabeth, who actually travels.
Queen Elizabeth II has crisscrossed the globe for more than 60 years. Here and abroad, she has shaken the hands of history. It's June 2015, and once again, the red carpet is laid out on foreign soil. This is Berlin's Tegel Airport, where the Queen's plane is touching down at the start of her 4-day state visit to Germany. It's been pouring with rain here all day. It's going to be a soggy reception, but that will not faze the most well-travelled monarch in history. The Queen first came to Germany on a state visit in 1965. It was a country still divided by Cold War communism. Her visit was a gesture of solidarity and a step towards normalizing relations with Germany in the decades after World War II. People still remember the impact of that historic visit.
I thank you warmly for your welcome. For my husband and me, it is a deeply moving experience to be with you here in this courageous and famous city.